Here is exactly how to get ahead of 99% of guys in the gym and get better results than they ever will. You're going to build more muscle and find it easier to stick to your workouts and be more consistent with your workouts, which is something those 99% of guys struggle with a lot as well. This is for you if you've struggled to build the muscle, the strength, and see the results that you want from your workouts, and you're getting frustrated and fed up with it all. The analogy I like to use here is like building a wall. A lot of guys will go to the gym, they'll try a bunch of stuff, do a bunch of exercise, which is like laying a bunch of bricks in a location, which is great, but then they leave the gym and they come back and they do a bunch of other exercises, a bunch of other random shit, which is like laying a bunch of bricks in another location. Like, yeah, great, bro. You laid down 11 bricks, you got tired, you went home, and then you came back to build the wall, but you laid down 11 other bricks in a different fucking township. You're not gonna get anywhere. What you really wanna do is come back and lay more bricks in the same location and continue building and building and building in that same place. You wanna write a novel, not a haiku. And if this sounds like a new idea to you, sounds like something you haven't been doing, then please watch the rest of this video because what I'm about to show you is going to change the way you spend time at the gym for the rest of your life. Okay, so there are basically 4 main pillars on how to get the absolute most out of everything you do in the gym, and I'm gonna break them down for you right now. The first is having a plan. Like, having a plan when you go to the gym drops 89% of guys right off the bat, right away. Most guys just have no idea what they're doing when they go to the gym. And look, having a plan is about more than just building muscle that stretches your shirt sleeves and makes you jacked as well. It makes things so much easier to stick to. You know that you should be going to the gym to build muscle and get in shape and look better, but go to the gym is just a random idea. It doesn't actually tell you what needs to get done on any given day, which is just another mental hurdle to overcome when it comes time for you to go to your training session. You don't want to be thinking about what exercise you have to do and this, that, and the other thing. If you're already struggling with consistency to go to the gym, this is a fucking nail in the coffin for you. So look, you want to be the builder who builds a wall when they go to the gym. You keep picking up where you left off last time. That means selecting a handful of exercises and sticking to them week after week after week for months and potentially even years. So stop guessing which exercises you're going to do on which day. You need to pick that, and then you need to pick how many sets you do. You need to pick how many reps you're going to do. You need to pick how much weight you're going to use, and you need to pick how hard you're going to push each set, meaning when do you know it's time to stop? Now, let's talk about which exercises you should do first. Let's assume you're going to the gym 3 days a week, which is a great place to start for beginners and even a lot of intermediates. In that case, you're gonna wanna train your whole body every time you go to the gym because stimulating muscle growth is a lot like prodding a sleeping cat. You poke that cat and it wakes up and it walks around for a little bit before it lays down and goes back to sleep. In the case of muscle growth, after you train with weights, your muscle growth rate is elevated for a number of hours before it comes back down and goes to baseline. So instead of just training your biceps and your chest and your pinkies on Monday and then doing it all over again next Monday, what's going on for those 6 days where the muscle growth rate is not elevated? That cat is just asleep. The muscle's not growing. So we want to do things a little bit more frequently. So here's how you build a full body training session. Pick a quad exercise, something like a squat or a leg press or a lunge type movement. Pick a hamstring or a hip hinge type exercise, like it's deadlift, a stiff leg deadlift, a hamstring curl, a good morning, something like that. Pick a pulling exercise that trains your back, like assisted chin-ups, seated cable rows, single arm dumbbell rows. I'll put a full list in here. Pick a pressing exercise that trains your chest, like machine flies, dumbbell bench press, Smith machine bench press, barbell bench press, incline press, you freaking name it. And then you're gonna wanna pick a bicep exercise, a tricep exercise, and a shoulder exercise. You do one of each of those exercises, and that would be a great format for a guy who wants to train his whole body, with maybe a slight emphasis on the upper body and really lots of upper body stuff. I actually attach a simple spreadsheet in the description. You can grab that if you want, and it'll just help you select which exercises. I put a list of each exercise type in there, and it'll help you keep track of your progress week to week, which we'll talk about in just a sec. So a sample session would look like back squat, stiff-legged deadlift, dumbbell bench press, lat pull down, dumbbell hammer curl, rope tricep push down, and dumbbell lateral raise. And then you're gonna pick a different batch of exercises for Wednesday and the same thing for Friday. And you're gonna stick with those exercises for many weeks until you get really, really good at them and really fucking strong. The only way to get better at these exercises and really start stimulating muscle growth is just repeating them week to week. You're gonna wanna write this all down in a notebook. There's just no fucking way that you can remember this, or like I said, just go grab that spreadsheet. Let's talk now about how many sets you should do. How many sets you should do is just another way of asking the question, how much should you train? And this is going to be individual for everyone, and it's probably going to change over time. So here's a really good place to start with a simplified strategy for adjusting over time based on whether or not you need more or less sets. Start with 2 sets across the board for each exercise. Seriously, that is it. If you've been out of the gym for a little while or you're relatively new to this type of training, that is going to be fucking plenty, especially if you follow the advice in the coming section. But we can always adjust accordingly. So if you're doing too much work, you should drop a set. You'll know that you're doing too much work if you get deep, gnarly, lasting soreness in that target muscle group that lasts until the next time you want to train it. So if on Monday you do squats and then on Wednesday you come back in to do your next quad exercise like leg press, but your quads are still sore, oh boy, that's probably a little bit too much. Or if you're doing too much work within an individual session, that by the time you finish your quad work, you're just like, oh my God, by that 5th set of quads, I just couldn't push hard anymore. So it wasn't really quality work. And lastly, but kind of tied into the first one, if you start doing squats and you get just like this biblical, insane pump that is so fucking crazy in your legs, you're twitching, you're cramping, you're just ridiculously weak in those muscles, and it leads to like lasting soreness that hangs around for 9-10 days, you're probably doing too much. And if you're doing too little, you can add a set. You'll know you're doing too little if you never really feel like you're doing a ton of work within the session. You never really get like that pumped up feeling. You never really get a ton of disruption or kind of like a sensation of weakness in the muscle, and you never really get sore in that muscle. If it just doesn't feel like you're doing much work at all within the session, let's say for your biceps, and you never really get sore, and by next time you come to train the muscle again, you're well beyond recovered and you felt like you could have just done a ton more quality work, you could probably do a little bit more. So only add or remove 1 set per week. If you do 2 sets on your first week of squats and you're like, that was fucking easy, I'll add 5 more sets. No, slow down. 1 set per exercise per week, up or down. Always make fine adjustments, don't do anything crazy. And what you want to do is actually look back at your notes from your previous sessions at the end of the week to make these adjustments on like a Friday or a Saturday. Again, really fucking impossible to do all this stuff in your head, but if you use the spreadsheet in the description or you write this down in your notes app or something, that'll make it easier. Now, how hard should you actually push each individual set? Like, how hard should you be training? Well, let me just preface this by saying that if you push hard in your training and you give high levels of effort on each individual rep, each individual set, and each individual session, you're leaving the rest of guys behind, basically. This is a fucking nail in the coffin because most people are just fucking around in the gym and just kind of going through the motion, doing their clown ass stuff and not really trying very hard. I'm not trying to sound alpha fucking masculine, whatever here. I'm just telling you the truth that most people take their sets to a point where they could have done a gazillion more reps, and that doesn't really stimulate a muscle growth to that high of a degree. Wow, I sounded so Italian. That doesn't really stimulate the muscle growth. It doesn't really stimulate a ton of growth when you leave a bunch of reps in the tank, and it's super easy training. Just don't take my word for it. Look around the gym and just look at what people do. What you really want is serious efforts against challenging weights for you. If you're brand new to this stuff, just push your sets until you do a challenging set. That means the weight is gonna feel hard to move. The bar is probably gonna feel heavy in your hands. Your muscles might shake. The bar might slow down despite you pressing at your best effort level. Or you might have to abandon the good technique that you're using in order to get another rep. Like you might have to lift your ass off the bench to press that next rep or something like that. Well, that's not really a rep. So you got to a challenging set the rep before. That's a really good place to start for how hard you should push. As you get more comfortable with this stuff, we can introduce the concept of reps in reserve, also known as RIR. Reps in reserve indicates how many quality, technically sound, good repetitions you could have done at the end of your previous set. So 1 RIR would mean, hey, I could have done 1 more really good, technically sound rep at the end of that set in addition to what I had already done. For most folks, keeping your training around 1 to 3 reps in reserve is probably a really good idea, and avoiding taking your sets to 0 reps in reserve on big nasty stuff like squats, leg presses, and any shit that's gonna like kind of come down on you is probably a really good idea. And you're just gonna generate so unbelievably much fatigue and just pain and soreness if you take a leg press set to 0 reps in reserve. So maybe hang those big gnarly things around 1 or 2 reps in the tank. Which naturally leads us to our next question. How many reps should you do on each set? You're gonna wanna keep your reps in between 5 and 25 reps for each exercise as a general rule of thumb. You probably want to keep it on the lower end of that for big, gnarly multi-joint movements like squatting, bench pressing, and things like that. And you can try single joint movements like lateral raises in the 10 to 25 rep range. I encourage you to experiment and find what works best for you. And this really just means getting a really good trade-off when it comes to, wow, I'm getting a ton of really good work in my bicep here, but everything else feels great. It doesn't bother my shoulder, my elbow, my wrist. All I get is just, oh my God, my bicep feels like it's gonna tear off the bone. This is amazing. For example, when I do squats in the 5 to 12 rep range, it feels like someone has inserted a bicycle pump full of molten lava into my quads, and they're just fucking pumping it in there every single rep. My quads get destroyed, sore for days, tons of tension, pump, and soreness, and just nastiness on my quads. But the second I take that into like the 15 to 20 rep range, it just bothers my low back, and my back just gets tired and gives out. And in my case, the opposite is true for the leg press. But you should try this out for yourself and see what works best for you. Now, how much weight should you actually use while you're in the gym? This is a very easy question for you to answer now that you know how hard you should be training and roughly how many reps you should do. You want to use a weight that lets you hit your target rep range for a challenging set. And how do you find that? You do warm-up sets. You start with the empty bar or just body weight or a really light setting on the machine, and you slowly work your way up in little increments until you do a challenging set. So for example, you do a set of 10 body weight squats, and then maybe you squat the barbell empty for like 5 to 10 reps. You add 5 to 10 pounds on each side of the bar. You do another maybe set of 5, and you're like, yeah, that's still pretty easy. And then you add another 5 pounds aside, and you do a set of like 8, and you're like, oh my God, that was brutal, that was hard, I really had to work for that. Great, you rack the bar, that's your weight. Write it down and repeat it for the following sets. Cool, so you're slowly adding load in small jumps until you reach a challenging set of 5 to 25 reps, depending on the target rep range for the exercise you're doing. Okay, pillar or chapter number 2 of all this stuff, tracking your progress is the natural sequel to everything we just talked about. And if you are not tracking your progress in the gym, I bet that is why you think going to the gym sucks and it's not enjoyable. Just starting to track your progress will do as much for your adherence and your mental engagement with the whole process as it will for your body and actually building muscle and strength. So like I said, write down which exercises you do, how many sets you do, how much weight you use, and how many reps you do. And each week you want to aim to beat those scores, even just by 1 rep or 2 here or there. And if the reps climb out of the rep range that you want to use, you add 2 to 3% more weight, and then you go again from the bottom. For example, if in week 1 I squat 45 pounds for 9 reps, then 7 reps. In week 2, I squat 45 pounds for 12 reps, then 10 reps. Week 3, I squat 45 pounds for 16 reps, and then 11 reps. On week 4, I'd add 5 pounds, go to 50 pounds, and squat it for 9 reps, then 8 reps. Remember how I like to keep my squats under 12 reps? That's basically how I'd manage that progression in that case. And this is a fundamental concept to training. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember only this. A trainer at the gym that I used to work at would watch me train my arms in the gym, and I would do these cable rope push downs. I would do like sets of 10 to 15, and I would basically just use 45 pounds week after week, and I would wonder why I wasn't making progress. One day he came up to me and he goes, hey man, how are the push downs going? Are those working for you? I go, oh, I don't know. My triceps aren't really growing. And he's like, dude, that's because you have 45 pound for 15 rep triceps. If you want more, you gotta do more. I'm telling you, this dude said this looking straight into my fucking soul. If you want more, you gotta do more. I will never forget that. That is essentially the underpinning of making progress that you can actually see and feel in the gym. Without making progress, you don't make any progress. Fucking bizarre, right? Pillar 3 is using good technique. Good technique sharpens your hard intentions in the gym into something that will actually transform your body. You wanna move the weight with intention. That means lowering it under control and loading up the target muscle that you intend to actually train. Once you're down there, you're gonna push hard or pull hard to return to the start position. You wanna go as deep as you can comfortably go under control on each exercise. Getting into a big stretch, especially under some load, is a really great idea if you wanna grow new muscle. For example, they did this really cool paper where they basically just put people in this boot, like they literally bolted this boot onto their leg, and it put them into like a super gnarly calf stretch, like 8 out of 10 painful calf stretch for hours. And guess what? Their calves grew just from the tension of being in that deep stretch alone. No reps. Another solid idea with good technique is just to avoid joint discomfort. If a specific exercise is bothering your insert joint here, then maybe it's time to swap it just a little bit. Maybe you can swap how wide you're gripping the bar, or maybe you can swap how narrow your feet are, or if your feet are turned out. Maybe use a dumbbell instead of a barbell. Maybe use a cable or a machine instead of free weights. If you've swapped that barbell bench press into a dumbbell bench press and tucked your elbows, and then you tried a cable press or a machine press and it still doesn't work, just fucking swap the exercise and do something else. You will absolutely never be able to push hard enough to grow new muscle if you're in pain. And lastly, and most importantly, focus is what turns all of this sunlight into something extremely powerful. The way I see it, there are really two kinds of focus: short-term focus and long-term focus. Short-term focus is about doing exactly what's in front of you to the highest degree that you possibly can. That means pushing that set hard, using great technique the whole way, and just absolutely having your brain switched on. I'm training my pecs right now, and I'm taking this fucking set to Pound Town. Making every rep count is key. And then long-term focus is just about applying that same degree of excellence on a bigger scale. You're stringing together huge streaks of fantastic workouts at this point. Great reps become great sets, become great workouts, become great weeks, become great months, and great years, become great progress. If you stay with this for long enough, you'll basically just run out of unluck. The likelihood of you consistently training with any degree of intelligence and intensity with the intention to get better at it for 3 to 5 years without getting seriously fucking jacked is just close to zero. You just need to start, and you need to keep going. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. It tickles me when you do that. And if you want to see more stuff like this, just subscribe to the channel. Again, my name is Matteo Mara. I'm the coach here at Mara Strength, and there's plenty more good stuff coming your way just like this to help you grow more muscle, lose more body fat, and look and feel awesome shirtless. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.